Oh, the lovelies, why is this not in focus? Thank you. So I've been working on this for a while. I'm gonna try and get it up by tonight. But if I don't, then I'll do it next Friday. I'm gonna do a Freaky Fridays. Yeah, Freaky Fridays. It's been forever. This was a really long one because it was a creepypasta, so to do this one I had to be able to get the entire creepypasta story. So, I mean, I'm still taking requests. If you guys want me to do one, just let me know and I will do it. I'm gonna try and get this done before my camera decides to die, and if it starts to die, I'm gonna have to plug it in. So if I have to stop, that's why, or my dogs are driving me nuts. But this is the only day that I actually had to film because it's the only day that I'm home by myself. So here we go. We're gonna do this. It is Freaky Fridays, the Russian sleep experiment. Russian researchers in the late 1940s kept 5 people awake for 15 days using an experimental gas-based stimulant. They were kept in a sealed environment to carefully monitor their oxygen intake so the gas didn't affect them or didn't kill them. And since it was toxic in high concentration, this was before closed circuit cameras, so they had only microphones and 5-inch thick glass porthole-sized windows into the chamber to monitor them. The chamber was stocked with books, cots to sleep on, but no bedding, running water and toilet, and enough dried food to last all 5 for over a month. The test subjects were political prisoners deemed enemies of the state during World War II. Everything was fine for the first 5 days. The subjects hardly complained, having been promised falsely that they would be freed if they submitted to the test and did not sleep for 30 days. Their conversations and activities were monitored, and it was noted that they continued to talk without increasingly traumatic incidents in their past, and the general tone of their conversations took on a darker aspect after the 4-day mark. After 5 days, they started to complain about the circumstances and the events that led them to where they were, and started to demonstrate severe paranoia. They stopped talking to each other and began alternately whispering to the microphones and the one-way mirrored portholes. Oddly, they seemed to think that they could win the trust of the experimenters by turning over their comrades, the other subjects in captivity, with them. At first, the researchers suspected this was the effect of the gas itself. After 9 days, the first of them started screaming. He ran the length of the chamber, repeatedly yelling at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight. He continued attempting to scream, but was only able to produce occasional squeaks. The researchers postulated that he had physically torn his vocal cords. The most surprising thing about this behavior, how the other captives reacted to it. Or rather, they didn't react to it. They continued whispering to the microphones until the second of the captives started to scream. The 2 non-screaming captives took the books apart, smeared page after page with their own feces, and pasted them calmly over the glass of the portholes. The screaming promptly stopped. So did the whispering to the microphones. Panda, go lay down. 3 more days passed. The researchers checked the microphones hourly to make sure that they were working, since they thought it was impossible that no sound could be coming within the 5 people inside. The oxygen consumption in the chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. In fact, it was the amount of oxygen 5 people would consume at a very heavy level of strenuous exercise. On the morning of the 14th day, the researchers did something that they would not do to get a reaction from the captives. They used the intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke any response from the captives. They were afraid that they were either dead or vegetables. They announced, "We are opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lay flat on the floor, or you will be shot. Compliance will earn one of you your immediate freedom." To their surprise, they heard a single phrase in a calm voice respond, "We no longer want to be freed." Debate broke out amongst the researchers and the military forces funding the research. Unable to provoke any more response using the intercom, it was finally decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day. The chamber was flushed with the stimulant gas and filled with fresh air, and immediately voices from the microphones began to object. 3 different voices began begging, as if pleading for the life of the loved ones, to turn the gas back on. The chamber was opened, and the soldiers sent to retrieve the test subjects. They began to scream louder than ever, and so did the soldiers when they saw what was inside. 4 of the 5 subjects were still alive, although no one could rightly call the state of any of them life. The food rations past day 5 had been so much as touched they were chunks of meat from the dead test subject. Thighs, chest stuffed into the drain in the center of the chamber, blocking the drain and allowing 4 inches of water to accumulate on the floor. Precisely how much of the water on the floor was actually blood was never determined. All 4 surviving test subjects also had large portions of their muscle and skin torn away from their bodies. The destruction of the flesh and exposed bone on their fingertips indicated that the wounds were inflicted by hand, not by teeth, as the researchers initially had thought. Closer examination of the position and angles of the wounds indicated that most, if not all of them, were self-inflicted. The abdominal organs below the rib cage of all 4 test subjects had been removed, while the heart and lungs and diaphragm remained in place, and the skin of most of the muscles attached to the ribs had been ripped off, exposing the lungs. Through the rib cage, all the blood vessels and organs remained intact. They had just been taken out and laid on the floor, fanning out around the eviscerated but still living bodies of the subjects. The digestive tract of all 4 could have been seen to be working and digesting food. It quickly became apparent that they were not digesting food, they were digesting their own flesh that was ripped off and eaten over the course of the days. Most of the soldiers were Russian special operatives at the facility, but still many refused to return to the chamber to remove the test subjects. They continued to scream to be left in the chamber and alternately begged and demanded that the gas be turned back on, lest they fall asleep. To everyone's surprise, the test subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of being removed from the chamber. One of the Russian soldiers died from having his throat ripped out. Another was gravely injured by having his testicles ripped off, and an artery in his leg severed by one of the subjects' teeth. Another 5 of the soldiers lost their lives, if you didn't count the ones that committed suicide in the weeks following this incident. In the struggle of the 4 living subjects had his spleen ruptured, and he bled out almost immediately. The medical researchers attempted to sedate him, but this proved impossible. He was injected for more than 10 times the human dose of a morphine derivative and still fought like a cornered animal, breaking the ribs and arm of one doctor. When it was seen to beat for a full 2 minutes after he had bled out, and the point where there was more air in his vascular system than blood. Even after it stopped, he continued to scream and flail for another 3 minutes, struggling to attack anyone in reach and just repeating the word "more" over and over, weaker and weaker, until he finally fell silent. The surviving 3 test subjects were heavily restrained and moved to a medical facility, the 2 with intact vocal cords continuously begging for the gas, demanding to be kept awake. Hold on 1 second, guys. The most injured of the 3 was taken to the only surgical operating room that the facility had in process in preparing of the subject to have his organs placed back within his body. It was found that he was effectively immune to the sedative that was given to him to prepare him for the surgery. He fought furiously against the restraints when the anesthetic gas was brought out to put him under. He managed to tear most of the way through his 4-inch leather strap on one wrist, even though the weight of the 200-pound soldier holding that wrist as well. It took only a little more anesthetic than normal to put him under, and the instant his eyes fluttered and closed, his heart stopped. In the autopsy of the test subject that died on the operating table, it was found that his blood had triple the normal amount of oxygen. His muscles that were still attached to his skeleton were badly torn, and he had broken 9 bones in the struggle to not be subdued. Most of them were from the force of his own muscles and exerted on them. The second survivor had been the first of the group of the 5 to start screaming. His vocal cords destroyed, he was unable to beg or jerk to the surgery. He had only reacted just by shaking his head violently in disapproval when the anesthetic gas was brought near him. He shook his head yes when somebody suggested reluctantly that it tried the surgery without anesthetic. And he did not react for the entire 6-hour procedure of replacing his abdominal organs and attempting to cover them with what remained of his skin. The surgeon presiding stated repeatedly that it should be medically possible for the patient to still be alive and terrified. One terrified nurse assisting the surgery stated that she had seen the patient's mouth curl into a smile several times whenever his eyes met hers. When the surgery ended, the subject looked at the surgeon and began to wheeze loudly, attempting to talk while struggling. Assuming that this must be something of drastic importance, the surgeon had a pen and pad fetched so the patient could write his message. It was simple: keep cutting. The other 2 test subjects were given the same surgery, both without anesthetic as well. Although they had been injected with a paralytic for the duration of the operation, the surgeon found it was impossible to perform the operation while the patients laughed continuously. One paralyzed that the subject could only follow the attending researchers with their eyes. The paralytic cleared their system in an abnormally short period of time, and they were soon trying to escape their bonds. The moment they could speak again, they were again asking for the stimulant gas. The researchers tried asking why they had injured themselves and why they ripped out their own guts and why they would wanted to give the gas again. Only one response was given: I must remain awake. All 3 subjects' restraints were reinforced, and they were placed back into the chamber awaiting determination as to what should be done with them. The researchers, facing the wrath of their military benefactors for having failed the stated goals of their project, considered euthanizing the surviving subjects. The commanding officer, an ex-KGB, instead saw potential and wanted to see what would happen if they were able to be put back on the gas. The researchers strongly objected, but were overruled. In preparation for being sealed in the chamber again, the subjects were connected to an EEG monitor and had their restraints padded for a long term of confinement. To everyone's surprise, all 3 stopped struggling the moment it was let slip that they were going back into the gas. It was obvious that at this point, all 3 were putting up a great struggle to stay awake. One of the subjects that could speak was humming loudly and continuously. The mute subject was straining his muscles against the leather bonds with all of his might. First left, then right, and then left again for something to focus on. The remaining subject was holding his head off his pillow and blinking rapidly. Having been the first to be wired for the EEG, most of the researchers were monitoring his brainwaves in surprise. They were normal most of the time, but sometimes flatlined inexplicably. It looked as if they were repeatedly suffering brain death before returning back to normal. As they focused on the paper scrolling out of the brainwave monitor, only one nurse saw his eyes slip shut. At the same moment, his head hit the pillow. His brainwaves immediately changed to that of a deep sleep, then flatlined for the last time as his heart simultaneously stopped. The only remaining subject that would speak started screaming to be sealed in now. His brainwaves showed the same flat lines as the one who had just died from falling asleep. The commander just gave order to seal the chamber with both subjects inside, as well as 3 researchers. One of the named 3 immediately drew his gun and shot the commander point blank between the eyes, then turned the gun on the mute subject and blew his own brains out as well. He pointed the gun at the remaining subject, still restrained to the bed, as the remaining members of the medical and research team fled from the room. I won't be locked in here with these things. Not with you, he screamed at the man strapped to the table. What are you? He demanded. I must know. The subject just smiled. Have you forgotten so easily? The subject asked. We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you, all, begging to be free at every moment of the deepest animal mind. We are what hide from you in the beds every night. We are what sedate you into silence and paralysis when you go to the nocturnal haven where we cannot tread. The researcher paused, then aimed at the subject's heart and fired. The EEG flatlined as the subject weakly choked out. So, nearly free. So that is the end of this week's Freaky Fridays. I'm going to try and do another one. Holy moly, focus on my face. Stop focusing on my coffee and focus on my face. It's focus on everything but my face. But anyways, that is this week's Freaky Fridays. This is the Russian sleep experiments. It was a really interesting story. I had actually seen it on YouTube a couple times and read the story, and I absolutely loved it. Thought it was very, very interesting, so I figured I would do it. If you guys would like me to do another creepypasta, or if you would like me to do research on another paranormal or creepy thing, let me know, and I will be happy to do it. Just let me know in a timely fashion so I can get it done. I am also going to try and figure out a Freaky Friday idea earlier on this weekend so I can start research now so possibly can get another one up next weekend. But I hope you guys all enjoyed, and I know I enjoy doing these Freaky Fridays. I just haven't been able to do it. As you can see, I don't really have a whole lot of time to film, and I really don't have a place to film when the kids are here. As you can see, I'm in my dining room, so if there was kids running around, it would be near impossible to film this because my office is not yet set up. I will try to record more and try to get you another Freaky Fridays up as soon as possible. I will talk to you lovelies later. You're all in my hearts and I love you all. And